Hey geeks, Akshay this side. Welcome to another session where we'll discuss interview preparation strategy by Yogeshwar. He is from Jawaharlal Nehru Technological University, Hyderabad, and he is currently placed as a front end engineer too at EPAM Systems. He pursued his computer science from the college, and now he's placed. So we are inviting him to this podcast so that he can, tell you guys what were the questions asked from him and what technology he worked upon and everything, what projects he did, internships, tips about resume, how did he managed everything, all the process, everything, guys, about the company as well. So obviously I always say that keep the session engaging, just keep on engaging in the comments, and we it's always good to feel like a family and talk in a community. Your voice is echoing. All right, Prashant. Okay, hi, first of all, hi Sai. Is my voice still echoing, guys? Can you give me a yes or a no? Rohit, Oracle as well. Yeah, definitely we'll diversify to other companies as well. We'll do that. Hi, Pradeep. I think my voice is fine, right? Give me a yes or a no, then I'll invite the guest and we'll begin the session. He says yes, no, no. Oh, wait. Okay, I think it would be better now. I think. Anyways, let's invite Yogeshwar. Yeah, and start the session, guys. Hi, Yogeshwar. How are you?
Hey Akshay, hi. I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm good, Yogeshwar. Great. So, Yogeshwar, let's start the session. I have some questions for you, and then we'll pick
Sure,
few comments. My
sure, sure.
first, obvious question to you is, why don't you yourself introduce yourself to the audience and tell a bit?
Yeah, sure. It's a tricky part. It almost feels like an interview these days to introduce
No,
yourself.
no, no. Don't take it as a
No, no,
just.
just kidding.
This is a session, really. You have volunteered to come here. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
definitely.
So, yeah, I'll try to keep it as short as possible. Hi, guys. Thank you for having me. I have been in the IT industry for about 5 years now. Uh, I have worked primarily as a front-end developer between different companies. I've had various stints at various companies. I think you've already mentioned that in the introduction as well, that I've worked at some companies such as Infosys, at Amazon, and Purple Talk. And in my current role at EPAM Systems, I'm a software engineer too, primarily working on the front end, where my responsibilities vary from doing a lot of technical work, writing a lot of code, and also to mentor junior developers, oversee the transition from a legacy sort of a background to a more modern front end tech stack such as a
Mm-hmm.
React or a Redux or a Node.js or TypeScript. And
Hmm.
I've been working with React for about 3 years now. I started out in early January 2018, and for over the period of time, I've slowly transitioned into becoming a sort of a full stack developer where we use a lot of Node.js on the backend. And yeah, that's the current tech stack that I'm working with, React with Node.js on the backend.
Okay. Okay. So, how did you get to know about this EVM systems opening, man? Was it on campus or off campus?
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, this was early last year, late last year, when a recruiter had reached out to me on LinkedIn. They said that
Mm-hmm.
we have an opening for a front-end engineer role, and I think you might be a good fit for it. Will you be interested? And I was a little skeptical because I really wasn't preparing at that point in time.
Were
And
you were you like were you working somewhere, or you were still in a how was it like when they approached you? Were you working somewhere?
Yeah, I was already a part of Infosys. I was working for Infosys last year,
Oh, oh.
and the recruiter reached out to me in early October, if I remember correctly, October 2020, and
Uh,
they said, "We have an urgent opening. I think your profile looks good. Why don't you join?" To be
okay.
honest, I wasn't really ready for interview preparation back then, but the recruiter convinced me more or less. He said, "Don't worry about it. It will not be that bad. I think you've already done a lot of work with React, so our interviews are centered around front end only. There won't be a lot of DS algorithms, so you don't really have to work too much about that as well." So hesitantly, I said, "Okay, fine. Let's. I mean, there's nothing to lose here, so let's try." And that's how it started, the process of interviewing for EPAM.
Great, man. Great. Okay. So briefly describe about the company. Like, what does EPAM Systems do, and what would be your role, if any idea you have about that?
Sure. So EPAM Systems is like a subtle product and service based company. So we do both. We do products and we also do a lot of service company based work. We have a lot of clients across the world, majorly in the European market, and we work with those clients to help them digitize their products. So I cannot disclose a lot of names of the clients that we currently work for, but I can give you an insight into the products that we are currently building. We try to do a lot of cloud-based works.
Okay.
So we use a lot of modern technologies such as React, and then we have a lot of cloud-based solutioning in place where we try to take a particular business model that is currently not inherently on the cloud and try to migrate it from whatever system they're currently on to a more cloud-based solution. Be it an online interview taking platform. So we built our own platform that is used internally for taking interviews, and that can probably be sold as a particular SaaS model to some other company who doesn't have their own interviewing platform. So we have these own systems that are in place that are being worked upon, and then also we work closely with clients, helping them digitize their own portfolios. So it's a good mix of both.
Great. That sounds interesting, and I wish you good luck, man.
Thank you so much.
All right. So let's come down to the interview process. Okay, like
Mhm.
the rounds. Let's talk about the rounds. How many rounds were there in the interview, and can you briefly describe all the interview rounds, like one by one?
Sure. So I faced Akshay. This was for a software engineer too, right? Front end. So I had about 4 rounds of interview. Yeah, 4 rounds of interview. The first one was a codility challenge where I was asked to complete a React task. So they had given me a piece of code that was partially completed. They were trying to build a functionality, or at least the idea was to complete one functionality and write some test cases for it. Part of the code was already written. I had to work on the missing parts and try to complete it within 1 hour, 60 minutes, I think. Yeah, 60 minutes. It was fairly straightforward, nothing challenging, nothing very difficult. If you are somebody who works with React on a day-to-day basis, then at least I felt it. I found it quite easy to complete. There were no real challenges around it, no such caveats attached to it. It was a straightforward challenge. Writing test cases was a little inconvenient, I felt, but yeah, overall, the experience of the first round was quite good because honestly I was expecting some sort of a lead code problem when I got the link to the codility test, but when I opened it, I was surprised pleasantly so to find a React question, and I was able to complete it. So I think a couple of days after I finished the codility round, the recruiter got back to me saying that it went quite well, and we are ready to go to the next round. The second round that I had was with a panel discussion. There were two people. One was a senior software engineer, and the other one was a software engineer too. And we spoke a lot about the things that I have been doing. So it was a discussion that was centered around for about 1 hour, and then for the initial 15 minutes, they spoke about the company, what the company does, and what is their role. How do they pitch in as software engineers in their current day-to-day roles? And then they asked what I am doing in my current role, what are my responsibilities, what are the things that I've been building, and then we got into the thick of things. So the other 45 minutes were purely UI based. Lots of questions around JavaScript. I was asked to build a sample application, a very, very simple sort of a calculator type application with vanilla JavaScript, where they basically wanted to see how well I am, how well versed I am with vanilla JavaScript, if I am able to do something without the availability of a framework like a React or a Vue readily available. After that, there were a lot of discussions around how I would design this application if it were to be built as part of some business logic. How would that work? How would I design an API that would perform some calculations in the back end and send the response back to the front end? And so yeah, so we had a good discussion about core front end topics. Again, no DS algorithm, no time complexity or space complexity questions. A lot of front end stuff. I did get asked a lot of questions around how I would use design patterns in React to probably evolve a particular design that's being used for a long time now. So lots of questions around those, and yeah, that was it. So a very, very good 45-minute discussion with them. I was able to answer a lot of questions around the front end side of things quite well. Somewhere between the design patterns things, I was a little clunky because I really had no prior experience or no prior sort of a exposure to answering questions around design patterns in the front end scene. So I was a little clunky there.
Okay.
And then yeah,
No HR round. Like, okay, two rounds were basically first round were completely technical, and the second round was complete thorough discussion with the senior software engineer, as you said, and software engineer.
yes.
No HR round. This was just two rounds, right?
No, there were 4 rounds. So the HR round was the final round. I had a cultural fitment round. It was
Okay.
a final round.
Okay. So what about the third round?
Yeah, the third round was with the engineering manager, the manager
Okay.
to whom I was going to report, whose team I was going to join. So I had a 1 hour discussion with them. This was system design plus a lot of behavioral questions plus a lot of agile and solid principle related questions. So system design question was quite straightforward. I was asked what sort of projects that I've been working on in the past. They picked up one from my resume and they asked me to go about designing it and how I would approach it if I did not have a senior developer guiding me, or if I did not have an architect telling me what technology I would use to build a particular product. So whatever I had done at Infosys and previously to that, they started picking one component from all of those and started asking me to integrate them into a current scenario. So that was pretty much it. And then a lot of questions around agile way of working and a lot of questions around solid principles and how if there were instances where I have used solid principles to probably take my coding standards to a better level than what they currently were at. So fortunately for me, when I was working at Infosys, we already were working in an agile setup, and we had the solid principle integrated into our coding standards. So that those were relatively easier to answer. And as far as the system design was concerned, because applications that I had listed on my resume, I had built all those modules on my own from scratch. So I was able to answer those questions relatively comfortably without any trouble. So that was a very, very good round. I mean, I had a very good discussion with the manager. They were very knowledgeable. They had a lot of understanding of the current setup in the front end side of things. Every time I gave them an answer, they were always forthcoming with a suggestion or an alternative as to why we cannot go with. One example I can give you of is that they were asking me about a particular logic that I had written using a third-party library when building application in React. So they said, what if this library is not something that is being approved by the company, or what if this library is not something that you're allowed to use? How will you go about writing a polyfill for it in vanilla JavaScript and stuff like that? So yeah, it was a very good discussion. And then actually, like you said, the fourth round was the HR round, where it was a standard cultural fitment round, trying to understand what sort of challenges I have faced in my previous role and what are my expectations from the current role. They try to tell me where I would fit in the current company and what are the sort of projects that they have currently in the pipeline that should be exciting for me. And then yeah, a lot of discussion around because I was joining remotely. It was the first time I was onboarded remotly. So a lot of discussion around how remote onboarding is happening, how they were able to, still keep that atmosphere going where everybody is working remotely and nobody gets to see anybody except for meeting rooms. So a lot of discussion around that. And then finally, some deliberation and some discussion around compensation and benefits. But yeah, it was a pleasant discussion as well, and we were able to close it within one day. So I think the overall process, all these four rounds, from the recruiter reaching out to me and from the final offer rollout, took about 1 month.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah, please carry on, Yogeshwar. Hello.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, please. You can, please carry on.
Sure. So like I said, it started out in early September, and then it went on until the first week of November. So in the first week of November, the HR finally called me and said, you know what, you've been shortlisted. Here's your offer. How soon can you join? And so they had, like I said, they had an urgent requirement, and they were not really willing to wait for a long period of time for me to join. So I had to convince my manager in my current Infosys back then to sort of let me go at the earliest. And yeah, that worked out for me. And then I joined EPAM in the second week of November. And I have to tell you, Akshay, because that was the first time at least for me, I was joining a company and remote onboarding happened. That was a very good experience. Honestly, you are used to going to a new company and expecting to meet new people, to see new faces, to talk to your manager face to face, understand how things are going to happen, what are the team members, and what are the projects that you're currently working on, the setup, what the setup is all about. So my first day, I had an orientation online, which I joined, and that was quite fun-filled. There was a lot of two-way interaction, not just
Okay.
one person sharing the screen and reading from a PPT, but lots of communication with the other guys as well. I think there were around 40 to 50 people who had joined the same day with me. So we had a lot of good vibes going, a lot of fun activities happening every half an hour or so. And then, yeah, so then after that, we were slowly started shipping out to different branches because not everybody was in the software stream. Some people had joined in different streams. So we decided to all go our separate streams. And then we had a discussion with the hiring manager, the person who had interviewed me. They came on call, they spoke with me, they welcomed me. They introduced me to my buddy who was going to be the person guiding me to the first week of work. And he was also a pretty cool guy. He had been in the company for about 3 months or so, I think. And he was still learning what exactly is happening around the work in the company. And yeah, so initially it did not really feel like it's any different to joining a company without the remote part of it. So the remote onboarding, I was a little I don't know, speculative about how a remote onboarding might work because I've not done it before, and it was the first time for me, and probably many of the people who were joining with me that day. But I think they were able to pull it off quite well. We had a very good session where everything was explained to us in proper detail, and sometimes there can be a lot of things that get lost in translation when you're taking things online. But whenever you had any doubt, there was somebody readily available whom you can quickly ping and ask for doubts and get them clarified instantly. The IT was quite swift as well. We got our laptop shipped to us in no time, and the setup, we were given admin access to set everything up. All the softwares were approved instantly, and yeah, so
Great.
it was pretty smooth.
Great, man. I think that tells a lot about the culture and the company, all these
Yeah,
things.
absolutely.
Definitely. All right, all right. Awesome, man. So, first of all, thank you so much for sharing everything, man, so elaborately
No
and telling
problem.
everything, going down the memory lane. Anyways, let's move on to the next question, Yogeshwar, correct?
Sure.
Yeah. Let's talk about your strategy. I feel this word strategy is used very loosely nowadays.
Yeah.
But if you get your system right, I think you can achieve so much in so little time. So, when should one start preparing for the interview? Share your strategic plan as to how you approached it.
I think Akshay, you kind of nailed it there and said someone can achieve a lot in a little time. I think that quite applies quite rightly to my case where I was able to crack an interview within a month without any preparation
That's
as
what
such.
I'm saying, man.
Yeah.
You
Uh,
you make luck work for you. Like you can do
yeah,
that if you make a right
sort of.
system, right? Yeah.
Look, Akshay, I've always believed that in interviews, right, technical interviews or otherwise, are always 90% luck and 10% your skill. Because
Hmm.
you can walk into an interview room feeling completely prepared, and then out of nowhere somebody throws a spanner in the work where they ask you a question that is not very straightforward. And
Hmm.
within that instance where you don't understand the question, you sort of end up, doubting your own self, and that leads to a very very poor interview experience. From my perspective, I always wanted to keep things very simple. I knew what my strengths were. I knew I was good at
Hmm.
React. I knew I was good at JavaScript. If there was
Hmm.
anything that I was not really good at, that was DSN algorithm, because the last time I practiced them was way back in college. So
Hmm.
that was already 5 years ago, or 4 years ago. So when I spoke to the recruiter who was in charge of all this hiring, they assured me that there will not be any specific DS algorithm round. But I still
Hmm.
did not want to take things lightly. I said, okay, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it with 100% commitment or not do it at all. So although I did not really buy any subscription as such, but I did a lot of Geek for Geeks, just array-based questions, string-based questions. I did not divulge into a lot of trees or linked list. Just trying to solve some basic questions to get a hang of how I'm doing. Try to understand some basic complexities of some sorting algorithms, some searching algorithms, just to remember exactly how these operations happen, so that if somebody asks me out of nowhere, I don't end up being putting up a blank face in the interview. So just to keep it what exactly is happening in terms of sorting and searching, and what are the other algorithms that are being asked. Then I also did a lot of research around what exactly is being asked in an EPAM interview. So Glassdoor is a very good place to start. I tried to find some interview experiences on Geek for Geeks and Lead Code, but unfortunately there weren't a lot to go by. But yeah, Glassdoor helped a lot. Glassdoor had a very good comprehensive list of all the interview experiences that people had faced for a similar role or maybe a senior role, and that helped me prepare as well. But again, like I said, because it was a purely UI round, I was quietly confident that the work that I have been doing for the past 2.5 to 3 years at Infosys and at Purple Talk would help me, go through the interviews. The only round where I felt a little out of place was when I was speaking to the two engineers in the second round, where they were asking me about design patterns. So design patterns were one thing that I did not really consider something that might be asked in an interview, and that probably felt like a mistake. Like I said, the second round felt a little iffy. I had a feeling that I had done well, but then I thought, okay, if they only consider the design pattern aspect of my interview, they might not hire me. So see, my advice probably would be to first of all get to know the role that you're going to interview for, and if it's a purely front end role, then try to understand what sort of a front end tech stack the company is working with, and then try to prepare for that. That will be the only advice that I can give to a front end engineer who's looking to interview at any company.
Okay. Okay. So let's talk about internships and project ideas. My last question to you. So what to keep in mind while opting for internships and projects?
Uh, that's a good question, actually. I think nowadays I see a lot of people on LinkedIn getting carried away with frameworks a lot when they want to build projects. I have seen people who are in the third year of college posting to LinkedIn about building projects on machine learning and all sorts of technologies. I've seen somebody who was in the second year of college building a project with React, which I find a little difficult to digest because I think if you are still in college, if you're starting out, ideally, if you want to pursue a career in front end development, then you have to be very good with vanilla JavaScript. If you're not good with vanilla JavaScript, then jumping onto a framework directly makes no sense. Sure, you can understand how the framework works and learn about the framework within a week, given the amount of content you have readily available online. But without vanilla JavaScript, it's a little difficult to crack open these interviews. And even if you come up with a very good project, let's say you're building something that allows you to search for some sort of you're building a application that allows you to publicly search for people's GitHub repositories and see who's building what. When you go to an interview and when you put it on your resume, any senior interviewer would easily be able to ask you to clone something like that without using React. So you should be able to build a similar sort of a project without using React as part of an interview question. I hope that makes sense to you. So
I have a question here. I have a doubt here and a question here. So languages, is that important? Like for example, if you know how to build something in particular language, so my understanding says that okay, if you can always figure out the language, the syntax and everything, but is it that important in interview process as well? Because as you said,
Uh, no, I think what I meant to say was that you don't, if you're particularly working to become a front end developer, you don't want to jump into a framework right away. That's not a good idea to begin with. You want to get a good hang of JavaScript first. If you're able to do something in JavaScript, then then using a framework will only make it easier. So if I have to give an example, if writing something in vanilla JavaScript takes 10 lines of code, then that thing might be achieved in React with 5 lines. But in an interview, they are really not concerned about whether or not you're writing code that is 15 lines long or 5 lines long. What they're more concerned about is, do you understand how the framework behaves behind the scenes? What's happening when you hit the button? So I think when you're building a project, keeping in mind the understanding and the fundamentals of JavaScript are very important. At least from the front end side of things. On the back end, I think you're absolutely right. The language doesn't really matter. If you are good with object-oriented programming, then you can quickly pick up any language, be it Java, be it Python, Kotlin, or whatever is currently being used these days. But from a front-end perspective, I have seen a lot of people who directly jump onto React or Vue.js. And even in my company, I see people coming up to me and say, "Can you teach me React within a month?" You can teach people React within a month or even within a week, not a problem. But depending on your understanding of JavaScript, working with React will become that much more easier or harder. So if you're already good at JavaScript, learning React will only take a week. But if you're bad at JavaScript, then you can learn React for a lifetime, but you'll still not be able to understand what's happening behind the scenes. And I think moving on to internships, I think internships are a very, very important aspect in terms of getting a feel of as to what the IT culture is like. See, when we were in college, way back in 2016, the kind of exposure that the students have today was not the same back then. We did not have all these platforms that are readily available online, or all these interview preparation kits to quickly Google up and find something. So our only way of getting to learn how the system behaves in an IT setup, in a corporate setup, was to talk to people who had already performed or worked as interns in some top companies, or talk to our professors who had some knowledge of how the IT operates. So internships are a very good way to get yourself the exposure that you need to work in a corporate setup. I see people who come to intern at EPAM these days, and a lot of people try to struggle with Git a lot. I don't know how to commit something. I don't know how to pull something. So internship really prepares you for what's going to come in the professional world. So if you get an idea as to what a software engineer does in a single day, then that's a very good takeaway for you when you become an actual software developer in a company, because you already have that back in your mind that, okay, when I go in, when I log in, I don't have to just start writing code from minute one until the last minute. You have meetings. There are days when you have to spend 7 hours in a meeting trying to figure out why something is going wrong and how to fix it. And you don't really fix it until after the day afterwards. So when you're working in a product firm or any firm as an intern, the amount of exposure that gives you, that is going to be very helpful when you actually move into a professional career.
okay, all right, man. Thanks, Yogeshwar, for sharing that. Let's pick up a question from the comments. One
Sure.
question. Okay, this question I can see. When BSc CS, he's doing BSc CS, can he crack big MNC companies?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I don't think the stream really matters, or the degree doesn't really matter. Although I'm not quite sure what they mean by big MNC company. Big MNC company can literally be anything.
Like a good, decent company,
Yeah, a
like
decent company. Yeah. So
TCS also we consider TCS and more.
sure. So I think, like I said again, it's a matter of getting your profile to the recruiter first. If you're lucky enough, the recruiter might source you on LinkedIn. If you're not lucky enough, then do something that will at least notice that'll get you noticed. So if you feel like you don't have the degree or you don't have the technical the college background, the tier 1, tier 2 tag to your profile when compared to other students out there, then you probably have to do a lot of contributing. I'm not saying just jump into open source contributing. Try to build a very good resume. Try to do a lot of freelancing work. Try to focus on building a website for your own. Try to have a portfolio readily available. Have an active GitHub account. That's very important. And whenever you find the time to, always try to find problems on Geek for Geeks or Lead Code and try to solve them and push it onto your GitHub repository. That way, you're letting the people who are watching your profile know that although you have a day-to-day job or you are studying in college, you're making time to learn these things, and not only are you learning them, you're also sharing them with other people. So that way you are getting the exposure that you need. And if you are able to put in the extra effort, let's say 2 hours every day to practice whatever tech stack or whatever core skill you want to perfect, then any company will hire you. There's no question about that.
Right. Okay. So thanks, Yogeshwar. That was it. So thanks for joining us and sharing your experience with us. Your LinkedIn profile is in the YouTube description. I hope if it's okay that people can connect with you if ask some questions over there, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Always glad
Great.
to help.
Awesome. Thanks, Yogeshwar. Good luck and stay safe, man. Stay at home. It's really important to stay at home.
Absolutely, you too. Thank you so much, Akshay. Thank you for having me. I
All right.
enjoyed this.
Bye,
Bye
Yogeshwar.
bye.
Mahesh, really sorry, man. You can ask your question to him directly on LinkedIn. His URL is in the description. Yeah. Stay safe, guys. Stay at home. Please get vaccinated. Cases are low, but still the situation, again, the situation can get bad. So just stay at home, please. Be responsible. And today evening we have another session with interview experience. So tune in at 7:30. And thanks, guys. Thanks for joining. Akshay Bhaskar this side. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you want to feature on our webinars, send in your resume to akshay.bhaskar@geeksforgeeks.org. And we'll be also putting up links in the YouTube description where you can directly go and fill the form to feature on our interview preparation segment or live mock or even special webinars. If you are really into some new technology, something we'll also talk about that. Amazing, guys. Thanks, guys, for joining. Take care. Bye. Lovely audience.